18 March 1991. Weimar, Thuringia. A public school after the break. A teacher opens a brown notebook and writes a sentence she would not have written a year before. Yesterday I taught that socialism defeated fascism, she writes. Today I must explain why our whole chapter became a footnote. She caps the pen. She looks at the faces of her students. She feels the weight of two eras. She has a name. Anna K. She is 37. The note is dangerous for its clarity. In 1991, there is no censor to confiscate it, but there are colleagues who will read her tone as betrayal, or as confession, or as an application for a new world. It is also a thesis that in this place, in this time, the curriculum is not only about past wars, it is about the mathematics of living after them. We move backward to explain the arithmetic that produced this sentence. We begin with a boy and a city. 8 May 1945. Gina, Thuringia. A boy of 15 stands by the Sali and watches men pull a wagon of bricks through a street with no longer a name. He writes in graphite on the inside of a ration card. No more sirens, no more orders, no more bread either. His name is Karl. He lives 2 tram stops from the Karl Zeiss works. His father, Emil, is missing. His last field postcard was dated January. His mother, Lena, pulls plaster out of their living room with her bare hands. The wall clock has stopped at 2011. The language of 1945 is simple. Hunger, rubble, fear. The statistics are exact. By the end of the war, some 20% of German housing stock lies in ruins. In Jena, Allied bombing raids in 1945 have torn open blocks like loaves. Across the Reich, it is estimated that 400 million cubic meters of rubble will need to be cleared. It is said that 60% of it is cleared by women. They are called Trümmerfrauen. They stack bricks into pyramids, scrape mortar with dull knives, pass them down lines like raindrops reversed. Occupation is a schedule. In Thuringia, American troops entered in April 1945. Their occupation orders are typed in English and German. They set curfews. They post lists of banned organizations. They appoint mayors. They take photographs for their files. Trams frozen on rails, men with armbands marked GWOT for German workmen, clearing roads under guard. Then, by agreement signed in Berlin, the Americans withdraw in July, and the Soviets come with their own orders. The mathematics of this rhythm is not just geography, it is jurisdiction. It is the arithmetic of who asks the questions. A Spushkammer file from 1946 in the American zone begins with questionnaire, 31 items. It is a sheet that every adult must fill out. It asks about party membership, positions held, donations, affiliations. It has boxes. It has lines for signatures. It is the instrument of denazification. It divides the population into categories: Hauptschuldige, major offenders, belastet offenders, minder belastet, lesser offenders, Mitläufer followers, and entlastet, exonerated. The mathematics of guilt looks official. It is also human. It depends on neighbors' testimonies and stamped letters. It produces tensions that will live longer than verdicts. Karl's city is in the Soviet zone. The forms are similar, but the process is different. The Soviets do not run Spushkammern. They run land reform commissions, confiscate property, arrest selected functionaries, and dismantle machines. The Central Administration of Justice in Berlin issues orders. The San-Nad. The Soviet military administration in Germany posts proclamation in Germany, posts proclamations in Gothic letters. There are appointments in factories. There is a new vocabulary: anti-fascist committees, people's judges, VEB, Volkseigener Betrieb, people's enterprise. Some of the old engineers at Zeiss vanish on a night train to the west. They are evacuated by the Americans to rebuild a new Zeiss in Oberkochen. Others board a different train to Kharkiv or to work in the Soviet Union. A SMAD directive cites reparations in kind. The mathematics of metal is the mathematics of loss. Each lathe, each lens blank, each vacuum pump is an entry in a ledger. Each subtraction echoes. In the winter of 1946-47, a famine arrives that is given a name, Hunger Winter. The calories on ration cards drop to 1,000 a day, sometimes less. The laborer's ration is more, the white-collar ration less. The arithmetic of survival is performed at every stove. People steal coal from rail cars. They subsist on turnips and ersatz coffee. The black market becomes a pharmacy and a court. Cigarettes are currency. A 1946 Allied intelligence summary notes exchange rates. 1 pack of American cigarettes equals a kilogram of butter. 1 cigarette equals 10 Reichsmarks in cash. The briefcases of men on trains are filled with belts and spoons for barter. Stories are told of a man who lost a fur coat for 6 spoons of lard, of a woman who got a bucket of coal for a wedding ring. The mathematics of the black market is not only economic, it is moral calculus performed in whispers. Rubble is not only rock. It contains human remains and memory. In the weeks after the liberation of Buchenwald, 10 kilometers from Weimar, the Americans issue an order. The citizens must visit the camp. They must see the crematoria. They must see the piles of shoes. They must see, in a phrase from an occupation report, what was done here in their name. There are photographs of women in coats holding handkerchiefs to their noses. The commandant's office is a museum. A day after, it is not an office anymore. The new signs say Museum of Horrors. Allied cameramen stand with tripods. The reels are later shown to German audiences in cinemas. There are diaries from this month. A Weimar dentist writes, "We did not know. We suspected. The smell was known. The train cars were seen. We knew, and we did not." The mathematics of knowing is hardest to compute. It names percentages of complicity in plural. After 1945, millions of people move. The word is expellés. Germans from Silesia, East Prussia, the Sudetenland, Pomerania. Destinations removed from maps by lines drawn at a conference table in Potsdam arrive in the Western and Soviet zones with handcarts and suitcases. The arithmetic of displacement in Germany is a figure, 12 to 14 million displaced. The arithmetic inside villages is simpler. A 4-room house holds a family of 5. Now it holds 3 families. A barn becomes a bedroom. A 1946 municipal record from Göttingen in the British zone notes population pre-war 52,000, present 80,000. It lists new names. It puts question marks by their origins. It writes Breslau, then underlines unknown. Tensions are recorded in gossip and in police blotters. A butcher is accused of selling to newcomers at higher prices. A church reserves pews for locals, then opens them, then reserves again. The arithmetic of space creates politics. It creates resentments that attach themselves to words. Newcomer, refugee, Volksgenosse, Fremd. Denazification becomes less a moral purge and more a labor policy. The categories fill in. By 1948, in the American zone of 3.6 million investigated, about 900,000 are classed as Mitläufer, and only a small fraction as offenders. Many are fined, some are sentenced, many are exonerated. In the Bundesarchiv in Koblenz, a researcher leafs through a Spruchkammer file from Kassel and finds case of Dr. H., school principal, joined NSDAP in 1937, attended rallies, signed letters with Heil Hitler, verdict Mitläufer. Sanction 300 DM fine. Allowed to teach. The mathematics of guilt becomes the mathematics of staffing. Schools must reopen, courts must sit, trains must run, files are stamped rehired, memory is stamped later. In the Soviet zone, a different arithmetic. 1945 to 48, land reform, estates over 100 hectares expropriated, land given to landless farmers, 3.3 million hectares redistributed. Denazification is folded into class policy. A factory director is declared heavy burdened and removed. A foreman who joined the party to keep his job is classed as follower and remains. The people's judges who preside are trained quickly. Their verdicts are documented in typed pages with uneven margins. The legality is new and brittle. The ideology is precise, anti-fascism as state doctrine. The anti-fascist narrative makes a national myth out of resistance and victimhood. It is not untrue, it is not complete. It names communists as the first victims and the heroes. It uses the word Jew less than the number of murdered requires. Karl is conscripted into the new world by the calendar. In 1949, he turns 19. That year, two German states are born, the Federal Republic in Bonn and the German Democratic Republic in Berlin. A currency reform has already happened in the West in 1948, the Deutsche Mark introduced in June. Shops in Frankfurt fill overnight. Shelves that were empty are full. A woman walks into a bakery and weeps at the sight of real bread behind glass. The Marshall Plan ships sacks and crates that say USA into Western ports, flour, milk powder, machines. The mathematics of recovery is a curve. It turns upward. It is called Wirtschaftswunder. In the East, the currency reform comes too, and the Soviet zone is spared the famine but given another burden, reparations and dismantling. There are crates that leave Gina instead of arrive. There are quotas for pig iron and for ideology. There are new festivals, parades with red flags, arrests that are predictable and also not. Karl chooses a job at Carl Zeiss Jena. He becomes a precision mechanic. He works with glass, with collimators, with patience. He writes his notes on squared paper, crown glass, 44% silica, 10% potash, stress fracture at 300 C. He joins the Free German Youth because he must. He sings in choirs because he loves to. He is not a believer, not a dissident. He is a measure of a population's middle. He marries in 1955. His wife, Marta, is a nurse at the university clinic. They have a daughter, Anna, in 1953. She will be the teacher who writes that sentence in 1991. This is not fate. It is a useful alignment for storytelling and a plausible one for the archive. The school that Anna attends has portraits of Marx, Engels, Lenin on the wall and, later, a framed photograph of Walter Ulbricht, then Erich Honecker. There is a subject called Staatsbürgerkunde, citizenship. There are tenets to learn, the role of the working class, the unity of party and people, anti-fascism as the founding principle of the GDR. The teachers are trained to link the past to the present. The Gegenwartsbezug. They teach that fascism was monopoly, capitalism's last desperate act, that the working class, organized and led by the Communist Party, defeated it. There is more truth than falsehood in some of it, and more omission than truth in other parts. The mathematics of education is this: build a narrative sturdy enough to stand until it has to be disassembled quickly. The 1953 uprising touches Gina lightly but decisively. On 17 June, factory workers in East Berlin and other cities strike and march. They want lower quotas and political reforms. Soviet tanks decide. Karl watches from a window. He writes in a notebook not dated. They are brave. They are foolish. They are dead men. We go to work tomorrow. This is the arithmetic of fear. It teaches lessons that will embed in muscle memory. Anna becomes a teacher because she likes books and children and the feeling of control. In 1976, she studies pedagogy at the Pädagogische Hochschule in Erfurt. She takes an exam in Marxism, Leninism. She is required to write a vow. I will raise the young generation in the spirit of socialist patriotism and proletarian internationalism. She signs. She teaches history, then called Gesellschaftskunde, with an emphasis on anti-fascist narratives and the successes of the 5-year plans. The school books on her desk are published by Volk und Wissen in Berlin. The chapter on 1933–1945 emphasizes working-class resistance, the heroism of Ernst Thälmann, the betrayal of the Social Democrats, the crimes of fascist imperialism. The chapter on 1945–49 emphasizes the anti-fascist democratic revolution in the Soviet occupation zone, the land reform, the founding of people's enterprises, the cultural renaissance with Brecht and Eisler. The chapter on the Federal Republic is a long study in accusation, remilitarization, emergency laws, the Auschwitz trials as too late, the student protests as a reaction to a continued fascist underlay. The book is more polemical than every event demands. It is less inquisitive than the truth requires. It does one thing precisely: it cements identity. It tells students that they are on the right side of history. If you search the Bundesarchiv for Schulbuch GDR 1970er Buchenwald, you will find photographs of display cases that show communist resistance groups in Buchenwald. You will also find fewer images of Jewish victims than the proportions of their deaths require. Memorial days in the GDR are solemn, repetitive, honest in what they include, false in what they exclude, false in what they exclude. The mathematics of commemoration is political. It counts martyrs according to the needs of today. In the West, the school books of the 1950s are different. They mention guilt and the victims. They also spend pages on the suffering caused by bombing, on the expellees, on the hunger. The new state needs legitimacy, and it finds it in the language of freedom, of integration into the West, of Christian democracy. The 1968 generation will force open files and break open narratives. They will shout at judges who served the old regime, at professors who returned to lecterns without more than a fine. They will demand numbers. They will point to Professor Spruchkammer verdicts and ask what those words meant. They will write pamphlets. They will make films. They will change the mathematics of public memory. The East will watch and interpret and condemn and also adopt language as needed. Pragmatism is a quiet virtue in a state of slogans. People survive. People learn the arithmetic of compromise. They learn that paperwork is the front line. On 9 November 1989, the wall opens. The phrase is used because there is no better. Something closed becomes a movement and then an absence. In Leipzig, in October, people shouted, "We are the people." In November, they shout, "We are one people." The Monday demonstrations fill Marktplätze. Candles are held in gloved hands. Anna goes to a demonstration in Erfurt. She holds a sign that says, "Open Borders." She passes a Stasi office that will be stormed the next day by citizens to rescue files. The files are paper. They are like schoolbooks. They tell truth and tell lies. Their arithmetic of names will poison and heal. The monetary union comes on the 1st July 1990. The exchange rate is political, not economic. Wages and pensions are converted at 1-to-1, savings at 2-to-1 in many cases. The mathematics of this change is not neutral. East German enterprises become corporations overnight. The Treuhandenstaat takes custody of around 8,500 state-owned companies with millions of employees. Its job is to privatize, restructure, close. Its mandate is to prepare for a market. Its decisions are measured in unemployment. The factories that define cities close or shrink. The Zeiss ingenia survives, but with pain. The East has no Marshall Plan. It has a miracle of expectations and then the arithmetic of disappointment. A Treuhand report lists columns, assets, liabilities, investment needed. It lists jobs spared, jobs cut. It does not list identity lost. A new denazification arrives without Nazis. The word used is Überprüfung, vetting. Teachers are investigated for Stasi collaboration, for party activism. The categories are different, the moral mathematics similar. A teacher who was a school party secretary is a Mitlaufer in a new sense. Another teacher who signed a letter supporting Biermann's expatriation is an offender in the eyes of those who suffered. Others are exonerated. The system needs stability more than thorough justice. The files accumulate. The hearings are not in Sprüchkammern but in staff rooms. The verdicts are delivered by school boards, by parents, by the press. Anna is vetted and remains. A colleague is renounced and let go. The mathematics of guilt is public again and private as ever. The curriculum changes with speed that damages the muscle memory of teachers. The West German schoolbooks arrive in boxes. They are glossy. They begin units with the Federal Republic, with the Weimar Republic, with the Third Reich, with the Holocaust, with democracy as practice. They treat GDR history in a late chapter, sometimes titled Der Weg zur Einheit, sometimes DDR und BRD im Vergleich, sometimes Diktatur und Demokratie. In an archival report from the Thuringian Ministry of Education dated January 1991, it is written, "Interim curriculum to be used until new standards are adopted. Teachers to be trained in 6-week seminars. Emphasis on plural sources, primary documents, multi-perspectivity. A printed training schedule, Week 1. Week 2, National Socialism and Holocaust. Week 3, Federal Republic, Basic Law. Week 4, GDR, SED State. Week 5, 1989-90. Week 6, Didactic Strategies for Controversial Topics." Anna attends the seminar. She holds a copy of the Grundgesetz, the basic law of the Federal Republic. She listens to a lecturer from Göttingen explain that history must be an open question, not a conclusion. The lecturer reads a quote from a historian. "There is no single German history. There are many German histories. Everyone writes it down." Anna underlines the words twice. She then sits in her classroom and looks at her students. They ask, "What were you teaching us before?" They ask, "Were you lying?" She says, "I taught what I was trained to teach." This is the mathematics of trust. It can be calculated on no paper. There is confusion in the room. A child raises his hand and says, "My father says that in the GDR there was no unemployment, that this was good." Another says, "My mother says that the Stasi came to our house because my uncle made jokes." Another says, "My grandmother was in Buchenwald. Is that now different?" A girl says, "My family are expellees. We were from Breslau. We came in 1946 to Hildesheim. They called us Poles. We are German." The teacher says, "Write each of these sentences in your notebooks." She doesn't say that this is how a new history is written. She understands that she cannot write one that is not contested and true. She opens a chapter in a West German schoolbook on the Holocaust. It speaks plainly. It includes eyewitness accounts from Jewish survivors, from perpetrators, from bystanders. It includes photographs with captions that do not editorialize. It includes debates about numbers and language, what to call this, what to include. It includes a page on Buchenwald that mentions the communist resistance and the Jews. It includes, in a sidebar, a sign from a demonstration in West Germany in 1979, reading, "Auschwitz is not past." The mathematics of memory is shown as an evolving series, not a solved equation. It demands a different kind of teaching, one that is more question than answer. The last chapter of this book is the one that contains the GDR. It shows a photograph of the Place de République being debated. It mentions the dissidents by name. It talks of the Monday demonstrations. It calls the GDR a dictatorship. It does not mention Anna. This is not an omission. It is a limit that she feels with her whole body. We return to 1945 to complete the ground that her sentence stands upon. After the Allies order the citizens to tour Buchenwald, the city of Weimar changes the way it walks past the Ettersberg. The bus routes, when they exist again, go around. In 1958, in the GDR, a memorial is built. It shows prominently the Buchenwald Oath and sculptures of men with muscular arms. The sculptor, Fritz Kremer, creates a monument to resilience. In West Germany at Dachau, smaller plaques are placed. The languages multiply. Hebrew is present. An American occupation report from 1948 mentions German visitors rare. The mathematics of contact is slow. The displaced persons' camps in the American zone hold names like Feldafing, Landsberg, Fehrenwald. After 1945, hundreds of thousands of Jews, forced laborers from the East, and other survivors live in camps near German towns. They receive UNRRO supplies. They marry, they give birth, they learn, they plan to leave. The arithmetic of their presence is recorded in the files of the Joint Distribution Committee. German locals pass by the fences. They sometimes sell butter to the camp. They sometimes receive charity from it. There is an exchange of looks that is hard to archive. A German man in his 50s teaches himself Yiddish to speak to his new neighbors. A 19-year-old survivor writes in a letter, "We live on German ground. It is bitter and necessary. We will not stay." German police reports record disturbances when a German insults a survivor. The mathematics of proximity is charged. Lawyers in the West German state point to the Basic Law's preamble and say, "We are called to protect the dignity of man." They pass indemnification laws, Wiedergutmachung. They put together forms. Survivors fill them out. The arithmetic of compensation is bureaucratic. It calculates monthly pensions. It demands proof. It is late and it is partial. It makes an accounting of suffering. That accounting is precise in its own terms and inadequate to the lives it measures. The files in the Landesarchiv list claim numbers. They do not count the hours spent on benches, the minutes spent deciding what to write. Karl's factory in Jena makes microscopes that will go to hospitals in the GDR, to Cuba, to the USSR. He takes pride in the work. He knows that some of the lenses go to surveillance equipment. He knows that all technology has more than one use. He writes in his notebook in 1971, "I make lenses. I see more clearly, less often than I'd like." He watches the world through the news on a wooden radio. He is cautious with the words that pass his lips. He is careful with the paper he signs. The mathematics of housekeeping in the GDR is ecology before the word becomes fashionable. People save string. They keep jars. They repair socks not because it is a choice, but because the shops lack what the television shows. The arithmetic of waiting is a calendar. 7 years for a Trabant, 9 for a Wartburg. The black market has another name now, Beziehungswirtschaft, economy of relationships. Coffee comes from the West from an aunt in Kassel. Bananas are for Christmas. The question, "Where did you get that?" is asked less, implied more. The police reports record thefts. They record jokes that are informant notes. The Stasi files are their own arithmetic. They are a ledger of trust betrayed and sometimes of friendship misread. Historians will read them. They will count hours of surveillance. They will compute the ratio of informants to citizens. The numbers will be suspect and revealing at once. There are also files never written. There are always files never written. Families keep their own. In the back of a kitchen drawer, a letter from Emil dated January 1945. Staying warm. Food short. Do not worry. He was listed as missing. Later, presumed dead. Lainey writes to the Red Cross. She receives a letter with the phrases of the period. We regret to inform. The arithmetic of grief follows a different calendar. It never ends. There is a profound difference between the West German Wirtschaftswunder and the East's better years. In the West, by the late 1950s, an opal symbolizes a promise kept. Unemployment dips. The CDU campaigns with the slogan, Keine Experimente. The mathematics is bourgeois, growth rates, pensions, mortgages. In the East, the 6-year plan promises more steel, more housing, more milk. It delivers enough that life feels bearable and sometimes proud. It does not deliver choice. It does not deliver rights. It does not deliver truth uncurated. By the mid-1980s, truth leaks in through television signals. Satellites cannot be stopped by walls. Students watch the West talk about the GDR as a state of spies. They note the GDR's economic stasis. The mathematics of the planned economy becomes the mathematics of shortage. People tolerate lines. They do not tolerate lies forever. Past a certain point, the arithmetic changes sign. When 1989 becomes 1990, the government changes its form and its lexicon. The new authorities in the East call for a round table. New parties form. The old party splits. If you read the minutes of a round table in Erfurt, preserved in the Stadtarchiv, you will find that they debated whether to keep the police commissioner, whether to request fewer or more West German advisors, whether to make a public confession about what was hidden in files. The mathematics of transition is procedural. It is impressively dull and cruelly urgent. In schools, the immediate challenge is prosaic: what to teach on Monday. There is a printed circular from November 1990 in Thuringia. Until new curricula are published, use corresponding West German materials. Maintain sensitivity. Avoid humiliating colleagues who taught under GDR guidelines. Include their expertise. Encourage open discussion with students. It sounds humane. It hides 1,000 accidents of humiliation. A veteran GDR teacher is asked to explain to students why a poem by Johannes R. Becher, once hymnal, now is a caution. A young West German teacher is sent east to help with modern methods and meets a classroom whose walls feel as solid as any ideology. A Thuringian headmistress says in an oral history recorded in 2005, "I had to choose which of my teachers to defend. I had to choose which of my teachers to defend." The mathematics of personnel is moral arithmetic, unacknowledged. Anna writes lesson plans in pencil. She underlines Weimar Constitution 3 times, then weaknesses of Article 48, then rise of NSDAP. She assigns sources, an excerpt from Victor Klemperer, a report from the Lichterfelde police after Kristallnacht, a page from a 1958 GDR textbook on resistance, a page from a 1982 West German Wordbook on the same. She tells students, compare the language. She does not say, compare our lives. They do that anyway. She loses colleagues, not all of them to vetting. Some cannot teach anymore in a room where their authority has been flattened by an event they did not control. A physics teacher takes early retirement and sits on a bench in the park and stares. A principal learns carpentry at 57. A party secretary becomes unemployed. An informant confesses in private to a friend and says, I believed I was protecting you. The friend does not speak for a year. The mathematics of trust is a sequence with unknown terms. A child in the classroom looks out of the window at a billboard that says Telecom Compt. The ground is dug up for cables. The textbooks on the desks belong to the West. The building is the East. Identity is a palimpsest with poor erasures. Carl is retired by 1991. He has seen his factory lose contracts and gain a partner in the West. He has a pension converted under the new rules. He understands arithmetic. He understands that conversion rates are always political. He writes in his notebook in February 1992, "We changed the flags and the money. We kept the habits. Is that good? Yes and no." He watches the news. He watches a report about a Treuhand office in the Ruhr being occupied by workers. He says to his wife, "We know this part. It has a different logo." He watches a television program on denazification in the American zone in 1946. He hears the categories again. Major offenders, offenders, lesser offenders, followers, exonerated. He thinks of the present. He thinks of the files that citizens opened in winter 1989-90. He thinks of a receptionist in his factory who was revealed to be an informant. He thinks of how she brought everyone flowers on their birthdays. He thinks, "We cannot categorize our way to forgiveness." He does not know how to say this to his daughter, so he does not. He wrote a sentence in his notebook in 1978, after a visit to Buchenwald, after the guide described how communists organized themselves and survived, how they swore to rebuild. He wrote, "They rebuilt. We forgot which stones came from where." He is not a historian. He writes like a man who has learned that each date has more than one meaning. If you look at school books in 1993 in Thuringia, you will see changes. The GDR appears not as a footnote, but as a chapter. It is connected to the Cold War. It is framed as a dictatorship. It includes the achievements of childcare and sports and healthcare, often to explain how people built decent lives in rigid systems. It mentions opposition. It cites Robert Havemann and Rudolf Barrow, Wolf Biermann, the women of the peace prayer circles in Leipzig. It includes photographs of the candlelit marches. It aims to balance. It still fails in places. The mathematics of a new curriculum is a compromise between justice and kindness. It is written by committees. It is edited by time. Anna still writes sentences like the one she wrote on 18 March 1991. She writes them in quieter handwriting now. She has developed a method. She begins each unit with a date, a place, and a sentence that could not be spoken at the time. She assigns students to write their own. She asks them to collect their family's sentences. A boy writes, "My grandfather taught me how to get oranges in 1984. A girl writes, "My aunt said in 1946 they were called refugees while they called themselves home." Another writes, "My mother said she never believed the news, but she still cried when Brezhnev died." This pedagogical practice is not original. It is old. It is how people have learned ethics through history. The difference is that here the recent past feels like an accusation, even when it is a curriculum. The mathematics of food recedes in the 1990s, but it remains in memory. Carl still weighs bread with his eyes. He buys extra sugar when it is on sale. He has a cellar shelf. He is not the only one. The mathematics of ration cards was a lesson that did not leave. He thinks of the man who came from Breslau to Göttingen in 1946 and was called Pole by his cousins for a year. He thinks of his own neighbors in Jena in 1945. He thinks of a Jewish man he saw once in 1947 in a coat too big at the train station with a tag on his suitcase that said, "Fur, Renwald." He thinks of the day he first saw a banana in 1958 in the window of a HO shop. He thinks of the question, "What did you know?" And instead of answering, he writes 2 columns in his notebook, "What I saw" and "What I said." In "What I Saw," he writes rubble, hunger, SS men captured by Americans, Russians in tanks with faces like boys, a woman who carried bricks taller than herself, a neighbor who went away because of a list, a friend who did not come back, a camp on a hill, a film in a cinema where people got up and walked out to smoke. In "What I Said," he writes, "We get by. You should not say that here. You must not say that at all. I do not know. I do not want to know. I wish I did not know. I know. We can compute the mathematics of guilt. Historians can. They can count trials and verdicts. They can count resettled families. They can measure calories and exchange rates. They can list the number of textbooks published, the number of teachers retrained, the number of schools closed and reopened. They can calculate unemployment rates by district after Treuhand closures. They can produce graphs. They are useful. They are not the whole. In the files of the Bundesarchiv in Berlin, Lichterfelde, there is a folder labeled Schulpolitik DDR nach 1989. It contains memos, letters, minutes of meetings. One letter is from a teacher named A.K. She writes that she can teach the new curriculum, that she believes in democracy, that she also believes that some of what she taught before was not a lie, but a part. She writes that she refuses to be made a simple symbol for a defeated system. She writes that she is more than the paperwork around her name. She writes one well-made sentence: "We were not all the same then, and we are not all the same now." It is not a plea, it is a record. The story of Germany after 1945 is a story of rebuilding, of recalculating, of rephrasing. It is the inventory OOWA,